Good morning to everybody that's come to the conference for A Boy with a Ball. I'm excited to be here with all of you. And Jamie has asked me to speak on evangelism. Now, ever since I can remember as a Christian, people have told me that I'm an evangelist. And I always kind of shied away from that because I didn't really think I was an evangelist, because my idea of an evangelist with somebody like Billy Graham or Oral Roberts, they go into stadiums filled with people, they give a gospel message, and hundreds, if not thousands, would come forward and accept Christ, and I never did that. And so I always struggled with that title. And then at one time I was up in Covenant Church of Mobile, and at that time, Robert Grant was the senior pastor, and he had me come for a week of meetings. At the end of the meetings, on Sunday, we had lunch, and he said to me these words. He says, "Jim, you did the work of a true evangelist this week." And I was a little perplexed because in the meetings, when I gave the altar call, not one person came forward to get saved. So I said to him, I said, "Did I miss something? Did somebody get saved after the meetings? Because I can't recall anybody getting saved." And then he made this statement to me. He brought up in Ephesians 4:11 and 12 about the thought, that God gave some apostles, then prophets, then pastors, then teachers, and evangelists. And then it says, for the equipping of the saints for works of service. And I began to understand, and he told me that a true evangelist doesn't win souls for the church, it equips the church to win souls. And even though I'm very personally evangelistic, I've never been an evangelist like Oral Roberts or Billy Graham. So with that said, I am going to try to share with you this morning just some of the things I've learned over the years where evangelism is concerned. Now, in the Gospels, there are four things stated that lend itself to the whole idea of sharing the gospel and evangelizing those who are lost. One is found over in Matthew 4:19, where Jesus said to his disciples that I will make you fishers of men. And so one of the things I begin to understand where that concept is concerned is that fishing is very, very important. Most churches' idea of becoming fishers of men is to put a sign on the outside of the building and say, visitors welcome, and hoping that sign will draw people who don't know the Lord into their church, where they will preach a message and a gospel message, and they will get saved. And though that does happen, that's more the exception and not the rule. To be a true fisherman, you got to go where the fish are. It'd be kind of like if I invited Jamie over to my house to go fishing, and when he got there, I was in my lounge chair with my rod out, and I had cast my rod, the hook, into my carpet. And Jamie would say to me, "Jim, I thought we were going fishing." I said, "We are going to fish right here." He said, "There's no fish in here." I said, "Whoa, I got a sign on my front porch that says fish are welcome. Sooner or later, I'm sure a fish will jump in here and I'll be able to hook them." That's preposterous. What you got to do is you got to go where the fish are. Real fishermen know the best fishing places. And in fishing, what's very, very important is the bait. And it doesn't matter whether I like the bait or not. What matters is whether the fish like it or not. So just like Jesus, who was very unorthodox in his way of reaching people who are lost, you've got to be unorthodox. Now remember, the bait is designed to get the fish to nibble around the hook. So whatever brings them close to the hook is what you want. So that's one concept. Another one is that Jesus is known as the friend of sinners. Now, and that's in Matthew uh, 4, verse 19, where he was accused of being a wine bibber and a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Now, the first accusation was absolutely false. He was neither gluttonous nor was he a wine bibber. But because he hung around gluttonous people and wine bibbers, he was accused of it's what they call guilt by association. But the second statement, where he was the friend of tax collectors and sinners, was absolutely true. It amazes me. For a long time, I read that scripture this way, that Jesus was friendly with sinners. And if that's true, then I've always been kind and compassionate where sinners are concerned. But Jesus said he was the friend of sinners, meaning that in his network of relationships, there were a lot of people who were lost. And not only that, what's even more important is those lost people considered Jesus their friend. They would tell others, Jesus is my friend. And so for a long time, I have practiced and asked the Lord to bring people into my life that I could, who are lost, and become their friends. Now, one of the things about evangelism, the primary thing is you've got to get involved in the lives of people that know Jesus. Involvement involves time and involves consistency, but you get involved, and it's very important that we do that. And so, just to tell you one quick story, one of the things I did in Orlando, as I like playing softball, this is before we had our own church softball team, but I would go out. I didn't play in a church league. I played in a city league because I wanted to meet and befriend people that were lost. And normally in Orlando, after the game, everybody would go to a sports bar. And at this sports bar, back then you could smoke in all the restaurants. All of these players and their girlfriends or wives would come, and they would drink and they would smoke and they would tell off-color jokes, and I would be with them. Now, I neither drank nor did I smoke, but I did tell jokes, and my jokes were clean and my jokes were funnier than their jokes. And over the season, I got to know them and began to become friends with them, especially one couple named Paul and Lisa. And so Paul played shortstop, and his girlfriend Lisa, really, she could cuss like a sailor, but I loved both of them very, very much. And one time while we were there, they finally asked me, because I never told them that I was a pastor or a minister. I'm a firm believer. You have to earn the right to talk to people about Jesus. And how do you earn that right? That's by getting involved in their lives. And so we were at the restaurant, and Paul asked me, by the way, Jim, you never told us, what do you do for a living? And I told them, I don't want to tell you. And they said, why not? I said, well, as soon as I do, you're going to start acting weird around me. And one of them said, well, what are you, a mortician? And I said, no, I'm a minister. And immediately their reaction was to put down their glass of beer and put out their cigarettes, because they felt then I might judge them. And so when I said that, Lisa said, when she looked at me, she said, shut up. Like she couldn't believe I was a minister. And then all of a sudden, Paul said, well, Lisa and I have been talking about maybe start reading the Bible. And then I didn't say it, but something in me wanted to say, shut up. Like I couldn't believe it. And so I told them, well, if they wanted to, I'd study the Bible with them. So they were going to invite me to their apartment, which was in a low-rent, high-crime area of Orlando, and where I'd study the Bible with them. And they asked me, Paul asked, if they could invite some of their neighbors to come. And I said, do you think any would come? And he said, I think some will come at first, just out of curiosity that Lisa and I are studying the Bible. And so I went down there, and the very first time there was just 9 of us, me and were the only males, the other ones were female, and they all came in. A couple of them came in with these big Bibles that you put on a coffee table that their parents must have gave them when they left home, big white Bibles. And when people who don't know Jesus study the Bible, at least this group did, they would lay on the floor, they'd have a bottle of beer and an ashtray, and so they would drink and smoke while we're studying the Bible. And never once did I feel like God was offended by that. And over the next 2 years, several of them came to know Jesus and started attending our church. I remember one time I came home from one of those Bible studies and I told my wife, Diane, I said, Diane, I think I can get them all if I don't die of cancer, because the place was always filled with smoke. But so it's very important that we get involved and become friends, because somewhere in the process, they'll begin to ask us the question about why we are the way we are. Now to finish up, I have about 9 minutes. I just want to talk to you from Matthew 5 and verse 14, where it talks about us being the light of the world. Now again, I want you to grasp that light is seen, it's not heard. It is demonstrated, it's not articulated. And it has the idea. It says in verse 16, let your light so shine before men that when they see your good works, they will glorify God. Now, don't romanticize the whole concept of good works. All that means is that as a Christian, I have to work at producing good in the lives of those who don't know Jesus. And somewhere in the process, they will begin to glorify God. But it takes involvement, it takes time, and it's important. You know, most evangelism training is training people to answer questions that nobody's asking. Now, as important as the training is, and it's very important to know the answers, what's even more important, and it's more difficult, is living your life in such a way around them that it stimulates the question. That's implied in the verse in 1 Peter 3, verse 15, where it says, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you, to give the reason for the hope that you have. It has the idea, if you live a life of hope in the midst of those who are hopeless, somewhere in the process, they will ask the question. You'll stimulate the question. And once they ask the question, and then they're ready to hear the answer. Boy with a Ball is very, very good at this. They go into neighborhoods, and all they do is live a life of hope. They offer them hope in the midst of people's hopeless situations. And over a course of time, people start asking the questions that will ultimately lead them to a saving knowledge with Jesus Christ. And so I have never been in a dark place, by that in other people's darkness, where there are dark lives doing dark things, and have let my life and my love shine where they got mad at me. If you go in quoting scriptures to them, they will get mad. If you tell them that they're going to end up in hell if they don't change, they will get mad. But if you go in and allow your life and love to shine, you will always get a positive response. The only time they get mad is when your words precede your actions. It's like one evangelist said, and this is a mantra from my life, is loving on people till they ask you why. And so there's this adage that says people won't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Now, let me tell you a story, and I'm going to close with this one. In 1999, I took my family on a vacation, and we went down to Kentucky to go into Mammoth Caves. And while we're in there, we're part of a tour of about 40 people, and we went about a mile in. And a mile in, there's this big cavern. Now it's all light. They have lights that show you everywhere you go. And so we got into this big cavern, and there was two guides, and the one guide said to us, huddle together. So all 40 of us huddled together. And then the guy that told us to do that indicated for the other guy to shut off all the lights. And I can't tell you how dark it was in there. I have never been in that kind of darkness in my life. One of the things I discovered about that darkness is that that kind of darkness has a weight to it. It seemed to weigh on me. It took more energy just to breathe in that darkness. There's a weight to it. And I found out that darkness produces fear. The first thing when I went out is I immediately went to touch my wife and two kids to make sure they're still there. And then I went back and touched my wallet to make sure nobody took advantage of the darkness and stole from me. So fear started dominating me in the midst of this darkness. Since I couldn't see anything in reality, it promoted a life of unreality. I began to just envision things that could go wrong in that darkness. One of the things I discovered is all the creatures that live in the cave are blind. Even those who aren't born there, if they wander in there somewhere along the line, they become totally blind because light is needed in order to stimulate sight. Extended darkness will produce permanent blindness. And so, and then, as up on cue, the guide who had told us to huddle together lifted up her hand, and she had one of these watches where they have a little fluorescent light and you press it. And even though that very insignificant light was there, it at least gave me an outline, and I saw the outline of my wife and my two kids and the other people. And so that little light started penetrating that darkness. And then almost instinctively, everybody started moving towards that light. They started getting closer to it. And that it surprised me what an impact that insignificant light made. Each person in the group automatically moved towards it. It was a natural reaction upon seeing a light when you're in darkness. Now, I want to communicate the fact that that's what we are. When we go into dark places where there are dark lives, they are weighed down with that darkness. They are fearful. They live in unreality, and they are blind to so many things. But us going in there and letting our light shine, that means our involvement, our love shine, it immediately caused them to start drawing to us. And over a period of time, it will bring them to a place where they can meet the Lord of lights. So I pray that these words that I have shared with all of you, and I keep looking at myself instead of the camera, and I apologize for that. I'm a novice at this, but it's important that we let our light shine in such a way is that people will see our good works where we labor to produce good in the lives of others. In some way, in the process, if we are patient, they'll begin to ask the questions that will ultimately cause them to want to glorify God. So I pray this helps you. I hope you guys have a great conference. I wish I could be there with you, but my schedule wouldn't allow me, so maybe next year I can. And but God bless all of you, especially you and Frank and you, Moses, only because I knew you guys from the last time I was there. And then all the other people that are coming from all over the U.S. and the world. God bless you, and may these words minister to you and help you to become more evangelistic. Thank you.